Hi everybody, it's Ruby with Valhalla Organics, and I'm here in the garden. We're going to do a quick and dirty how to get your victory garden going training today. So again, this is Ruby Reed with Valhalla Organics, and we're here in Talent, Oregon in the backyard. It's a beautiful sunshiny day here in Southern Oregon. If you're joining live, we would love to have you put your comments and questions. We'd love to know where you're joining from. And yeah, we're just really glad that you're here. So I know a lot of folks right now are starting to think about how can I grow food in my backyard for my family, for my community, for my mental health. This is my happy place. So when I'm feeling really stressed out, I come out here and I dig in the dirt, you guys. So what we're going to talk about today is gardening with what you've got. You don't need to have a lot of fancy tools. You don't need to have a lot of fancy knowledge. Plants are really actually quite forgiving. And we're going to talk about some of my favorites today. So the things we chose to talk about today, we picked for a really specific reason. We're going to talk about carrots and peas and radishes. So we'll start with the radishes. There's not really much to see here because this is just an envelope full of seeds, but they're French breakfast radishes, and I picked these up at a seed swap last year. So in our community, we have volunteers who put together an annual seed swap, and so these are seeds that were shared by another community member. They're my favorite kind of radish, which is a French breakfast radish. They're about this long. Part of it's white and part of it's pink, and they're a little spicy. They're really a great radish. But one of the reasons that we picked radishes is that they turn into food really fast, right? So they're not something you're gonna have to wait a really long time to be able to eat. And they're also really cold hardy, and so in places where it's still a little bit chilly, maybe it's cold at night, radishes are still gonna be probably fine to start outdoors in almost any zone. So again, if you're joining, we would love to know where you're joining from. And if you know your USDA hardiness zone, definitely go ahead and let us know what that is. If you don't know what it is, when this video is over, you can just Google USDA hardiness zone, and then you can find out. It's basically a numerical score, and it'll tell you things like what plants are going to grow really well in your area, what plants really want it hotter or colder, wetter, drier than what you have going on in your local climate. So yeah, so radishes. We also do just the regular kind of round radishes that are red on the outside and white on the inside. And I really recommend radishes, especially for gardening with kids, because like I said, they're a lot faster than most other plants, and so you get sort of the immediate gratification of, you plant them, they come up pretty quickly within a week usually, and then once they're up, it only takes about 30 days for you to be pulling radishes out of the ground and putting them into your face. So radishes are a really good choice. Also got some carrot seed out here. Carrots are another really good cold hardy crop. They don't really mind being cold. And what we usually plant is a variety, but I really like these guys, little finger carrots. They're small, and so they're also ready a little bit faster. And so carrots will be usually about 6 weeks from when they come up, versus radishes that are a little bit faster. And the smaller the carrot, probably the faster you're going to be able to harvest it. So we also do these guys. So these are big, and the little fingers are little, and you can mix it up. You can sort of tell when the carrots are ready and yank them. All right, so that is radishes and carrots. And then these guys are peas. My favorite. These are sugar snap peas. These are like my favorite treat. I mean, if I'm hungry, I come to the garden and I'm just eating them. They hardly ever make it into the house because I have that habit. And the only thing that's special about peas is that they need something to climb on. So you don't need anything fancy. This is left over from when we had chickens. So the peas will be down here and they'll just grow up the trellis. You'll be able to harvest them. So that's the only really special thing about peas. Peas are also really satisfying because they come up really quickly. They're very vigorous, and they're pretty hard to kill. So that's a little bit about the seeds. I brought out two other things. One is marigolds, and the other one is nasturtiums. So nasturtiums are an edible flower, which is really cool. They reseed themselves really well, which is awesome. Pollinators like them, also a bonus. And they keep away a lot of different bugs. So one of the things that I like to do is companion planting. So there's some plants that bugs really like, and there's some plants that they just don't really like, actually. And so marigolds and nasturtiums are beautiful flowers, and they reseed themselves nicely, and they also repel a lot of bugs that like the plants that I hope they don't get to eat. So that's kind of a fun thing. So what I'm going to do is take you on a little tour of what we planted already, because basically what I did, sorry for the Spike Lee cinematography here, you guys, but I started prepping this bed from the far side. So you can see here, this is, I already turned over the soil. We'll talk about that. I put compost in there, and we'll talk about that. So I don't know if you guys can see this really, really well, but there's a lot of tiny sprouts in here. A lot of these are carrots. Some of them are Swiss chard and spinach. And this big beast right here is cilantro, planted cilantro, aka coriander, in 2016. And it keeps reseeding itself, and we eat it almost all year round. So I just leave them wherever they come up. That's where they get to be. We got a little more Swiss chard and some beets coming up over there. And then my favorite, little wee peas. So peas are really satisfying. A lot of times they come up and they've already got little leaf clusters on them. So we really like those guys. And then carrots are kind of fuzzy. I don't know if you can see them, but when they come up, they look kind of fuzzy. And then there's some broccoli too. Yeah, so those guys are broccoli. And then these are the places that this is all radishes, but I planted them a couple days ago, and as you can see, they haven't come up yet. So you can kind of get a look at what it'll look like, probably in about 2 weeks after you start planting your seeds at the end of the bed, and a week after you've planted your seeds. You probably won't see much going on. So especially if you're gardening with kids, let them know that it's okay. It's going to take probably a week or maybe 2 weeks to even see any little sprouts. And you might not be able to identify what they are, if they're a weed or if they're what you planted. So you can just leave them and let them grow. The bigger they get, the easier it'll be to figure out what they are. So that's one piece of advice. You can also Google pictures of the seedlings that you're looking for, because they'll all kind of start out looking the same or similar. And they usually put out kind of 2 very generic looking leaves, and then the next set will be like fuzzy leaves for carrots, or kind of these heart-shaped leaves for broccoli. So if you just get used to looking at your variety that you planted, then you'll be able to yank out anything that's actually a weed. So let's see, the next part of this is about the soil. So I'm going to take you on a small journey here. This is like, imagine this is your yard, this is your lawn, this is your area that you want to plant in. As you can see, this is like quite densely populated with little plants and little weeds and random stuff. So all I did to make this spot was I just yanked up the weeds that were on the top, and I put them into this bin. This is like the jankiest, oh sorry, you can't really see that at all. So it's just a bin, and I'm dumping the stuff from the garden into that bin. And we'll talk about compost in another video, but this is like the very quick and dirty way to do it, is just make a pile, cover it up with dirt, and leave it for a while. And when it looks like dirt again, it's compost, you can use it. All right, so pretty much all I did was yank out these plants, throw them in here, and then you kind of end up with some areas that have like plants with root balls that don't want to come up when you yank them. So I have two tools. You really don't need anything fancy. Almost all my real garden tools are up at the farm. So this is just a regular shovel. Probably if you don't have one, your neighbor has one. So for those root balls that won't come up, just kind of yank them, and then you can throw that in your compost too. So that's all I really did here, was just pull up the plants that were immediately in that area. And this part of our garden bed was already for compost. So last season we didn't plant anything in this part, we just put compost in there. So I've got last year's compost that I'm mixing in as well. You can get a couple of shovelfuls of compost, and then you just kind of mix it in there with the dirt. So this is last year's compost, and honestly it's not entirely fully composted, but again, plants are actually much more forgiving than we give them credit for. So we're gonna pretend that I've actually filled, this whole area, and this is not even necessary. If you don't have a rake like this, you don't really need to do it. You can just smooth out with your hands, but I'm gonna try to make it flat with a nice little rake. So, and again, plants are forgiving. Doesn't have to be perfect. There can be little divots, there can be little areas that, aren't exactly perfect. The main thing is just to get something going. All right, so I'm gonna bring you over here, so hopefully you can see dirt. All right, so we've got like some pretty nice looking dirt here, so it's still some little weeds and whatnot we can take out of there. So then, let's see where we can get you. All right, so in terms of the actual seeds, I'm going to show you what they look like. So the size of seeds gives you a really good clue about how deeply they need to be planted. So a seed that's really big is usually going to need to be planted a lot deeper than a seed that's really little. So this is what radish seeds look like. They're medium-sized seeds, I would say. And they're usually kind of smooth and nice looking. And they go about 1/4 inch into the ground. Your seed packet will tell you how deep to plant things. And honestly, with radishes and carrots, I'm a little haphazard because they don't really mind being that close to each other. So you can get a whole bunch of them into a small space. But what you're going to want to do is either look at your seed packet or just go on Google for the variety that you're trying to plant, and it'll tell you how deep to plant them and how far apart to plant them. There's another fun thing that you can do with carrots and radishes, because your radishes are going to be ready earlier. So you can do a row of carrots and then pretty close by a row of radishes, and a row of carrots and a row of radishes, because your radishes are going to be done and you pull them out of the ground, and then the carrots have a little extra room. So if you're gardening in a small space, that can be really helpful. Radishes also have a really great repellent factor, like the marigolds and the nasturtiums do. So sometimes I'll do radishes as like a ring around plants I want to protect. So it's really easy to get radishes into the ground. And then peas are way bigger. So you guys know what pea seeds look like because they're peas, right? That's what they are. And they go usually about 1/2 inch to 1 inch into the ground, but your seed packet will tell you. And so with the peas, I'm not just going to plant them willy-nilly kind of wherever. I'm going to make sure that they're close enough to this that they can actually climb up a bit. So they'll be good, and they'll grow kind of straight up about 6 inches before they start to flop over. So you can plant them, 5 or 6 inches away from the little trellis and still reasonably expect that they'll be able to get to it. Now, worst case, if you have like a floppy little one or one that just like keeps going off base, you can just use a stick, kind of as a bridge. That's a piece of our rose bush. So if I had a pea that was way over here, just make it a bridge and they'll climb up. All right, so peas can also go pretty close next to each other, so you'll see what your seed packet says, but I tend to put them pretty close to each other because they don't seem to really suffer from it, and then you get a better yield out of it. So, the peas. And then carrots are different because they're teeny. Carrots are like the teeniest little seeds. So actually, usually what I do is I have a little bag of sand, and I would mix up the carrots and the sand because it helps to spread out the seed when you're sprinkling it. Yeah, carrot seeds are little tiny little seeds. And they don't get buried at all. And basically what you're going to do is sprinkle them. So you're going to kind of sprinkle them on the top of the soil. And I don't know if you guys noticed on the other side of the bed that there's kind of like clumps of seeds. And that's what happens when you don't use the sand. You get these little clumps of seeds. So if you are doing carrot seed and you want to do a lot of it, it's a good idea to just mix like half sand and half carrot seeds and then sprinkle that. Because I'm going to end up with a lot of carrots very close together and probably have to cull some of them. So you can just kind of tamp it down a little bit, but you don't want to bury those seeds. They're actually going to be on top of the soil. All right. So the next thing that I would do, well, I'm going to do that after the video is over because my hose is completely messed up. So the next thing that you would want to do is water in the garden. So you want to make sure that it was relatively moist when you started planting. Like, you don't want it to be bone dry. And then you're going to give it a pretty good soak. And then just check on it the next day and see, has the topsoil dried out? Because especially with the carrots, you want to keep it not swampy, but you want it to be moist on the surface, not dry. So I'm going to take a look in the comments about questions after we finish this video, and I will follow up with you guys on the comment thread. My computer is not showing me what your questions are, so I appreciate everybody being here, and we'll definitely do another video about soil preparation and some different ways that you can make your own compost. But for now, if you're just getting started, I would recommend, if you're gardening outside in like a garden bed or part of your yard, just get bed soil, garden bed soil, and probably a bag of compost. So you're going to mix up the soil and the compost. If you're doing containers, you can get what's called potting soil, and that usually will already have some compost and amendments in it. But if you're just getting started, all you need is some compost and some soil and some seeds, a little water, a little sunshine, and that's all you need. You can grow your own food in the backyard. Thanks for joining us.